and thanks to our musicians, both vocal and instrumental. I appreciate that very much. Well, Tuesday is Veterans Day, and this service is dedicated to veterans, and I thank you for being here. I believe we have a few veterans in the house, and if you're able, veterans, could you stand, please? Great. All right. Well, I salute you, and I thank you for your protection, for the sacrifices you've made for our friends, our families, our country, and thank you to your families as well, who also sacrificed to support you. They missed you, they worried about you, they feared for you, and they supported you, and thankfully they welcomed you home. Thank you. Now, I do have a brief poem to precede my few words. And it's interesting. This poem has sort of multiple meanings for me. There was a time, probably 10 years ago or so, when Dennis Meacham was here. Many of us will remember Dennis. And he was giving, it was either a Memorial Day service or a Veterans Day service. And he read this poem. And I was sitting over there where Sally was sitting. And I heard this, and I was in the midst of writing Saving Ben Tre and trying to work out a lot of things in my head. And when he read this poem, it just grabbed me. And even though it's entitled Memorial Day Prayer, it still has relevance to Veterans Day. And it's also a poem that I felt was so significant that I found a way to include it in Saving Ben Tre during a service given by a chaplain to a mobile advisory unit in the Mekong Delta. So it starts, Spirit of Life, whom we have called by many names in thanksgiving and in anguish. Bless the poets and those who mourn. Send peace for the soldiers who did not make the wars, but whose lives were consumed by them. Let strong trees grow above the graves far from home. Breathe through the arms of their branches. The earth will swallow your tears while the dead sing, no more, never again, remember me. For the wounded ones and those who receive them back, let there be someone ready when the memories come, when the scars pull and the buried metal moves, and forgiveness for those of us who were not there for our ignorance. And in us, veterans in a forest of 1,000 fallen promises, let new leaves of protest grow on our stumps. Give us courage to answer the cry of humanity's pain, and with our bare hands, our full hearts, with all our intelligence, let us create the peace. And I thank Barbara J. Peskin for those words. And Barbara, I didn't steal it from Barbara, by the way. I wrote to her after Dennis shared the poem with me and asked for her permission to include it in the book. So that was very kind of her. So we say, love is the spirit of this meeting house, and service is its foundation. Service is its foundation. Enough said, right? That just about says it all in a nutshell. So you're probably wondering, why would I continue? So this service is about service. So I do have a few more words to say. Now, indeed, service is the foundation of our quest for higher meaning. When we help one another, we have a greater chance for the well-being of all and for our society. Yet, these phrases can be vague recitations without knowing the sacrifices that give meaning to the words. Now, when it comes to veterans, most of us have heard the phrase, "Thank you for your service." It's a tidy way to express regard to a veteran who has done something for their country and their fellow citizens. Probably gives the veteran a warm feeling. It takes only a moment to say, but more importantly, that appreciation can tell the veteran that it was all worthwhile, that someone who is thankful for the sacrifice made by a veteran is also someone who cares about our common interest and the welfare of our nation and its people. The true meaning of service is like a precious gem which reflects our values in its depths. My own story of service starts simply. I grew up right after World War II. It sort of seemed natural to me that somebody serves their country. I mean, after all, that's what all the World War II veterans did, and that was the dominant culture in at that time, after World War II. My father was a naval officer in the Pacific. My uncle was in World War I. I even earned the Citizenship Merit Badge on my way to becoming an Eagle Scout. And I was also awed by Nathan Hale's last words, and are widely quoted as, "I only regret that I have but one life to lose for my country." I'm also awed by the pledges of our founding fathers in the concluding phrase of the Declaration of Independence. We mutually pledge to each other our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Our lives, our fortunes, and our sacred honor. Would we give any of those up? Would we give them all up? So when the founding fathers were thinking of that, they weren't pursuing self-interest. They weren't only looking out for themselves. They were putting it all on the line for each other. So like them, a veteran puts it on the line for a greater purpose than their own self-interest. They're willing to sacrifice their comfort and possibly their lives, like all those who have gone before, to preserve our freedoms. Oh yeah, we can see the visible parts of service. Think of Normandy. Now, many of you have probably seen Saving Private Ryan and the beginning of the movie, and when the Allies landed on the beaches on June 6, 1944. Well, Liz and I were fortunate. We just recently were able to go to Normandy finally, after thinking about it for a long time. And we saw Utah Beach, Omaha Beach, and Pointe du Hoc. And standing there and looking out and imagining what was going on, we could picture the Allied invasion and the German forces firing upon them, and the death and destruction of that time. That was an ultimate scene of horror and destruction in the extreme. So we can see the sacrifices veterans have made. We know that veterans have left their way of life, interrupted their jobs, their careers, their families, to serve their country and their fellow citizens. And we can see the sacrifices made by those who suffer from their wounds. They've lost the ability to see, to hear, lost an arm or a leg, or suffer from the hazards of Agent Orange or fumes from a burn pit, or those who experience trauma through nightmares and anxiety. And there are the Vietnam veterans who bore the blame and ridicule of a society suffering from the shocks and losses of the Vietnam War. We can see these veterans, and we can also see the families who suffer from a loved one who needs continuous medical treatment, who can't do all they could do before they went to serve, before they served. This exacts a toll on family stability and is certainly an extra burden to carry. We can see these sacrifices of service given to protect our life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And many have died to preserve our freedoms, like those who have made the ultimate sacrifice. In the words of Lincoln, those who gave the last full measure of devotion, so that government of the people, by the people, for the people, shall not perish from this earth. All gave some, and some gave all. Now, it's nice when someone takes a moment to say, thank you for your service. But it can be troubling too. I had an experience that was troubling. It was kind of like a jolt when I was thanked for my service because it felt awkward. I was visiting the Vietnam Veterans Memorial down in Washington, D.C., and it was a warm spring day, clear, and walking up to the memorial, I was coming up on the surrounding paths that were facing the deep V in the earth. I was walking behind the Women's Memorial, the Vietnam Women's Memorial, walking behind the three servicemen statue, and I walked up to the National Park Service books, the metal-clad books they have there with the names of the 58,000. And I was looking in those books for familiar names, and up came this fellow. He was wearing military garb. He was a docent. He was wearing an Army field jacket. He had on insignia. He had on other military insignia. And he asked me, how you doing? And so I said, hello, Sarge, how you doing? He was very friendly and helpful. He was helping people along the way. Now, I wasn't wearing anything that looked military. I was wearing no military garb, no insignia. But I guess I must have looked like a vet to him. And he asked, where'd you serve? And so I said, well, I was in MAC V on a 5-man mobile advisory team working on village hamlet security in the Mekong Delta, working with the regional and popular forces. And he said, welcome home. I said, welcome home, Sarge. And just then, a middle-aged man came walking up the path and looking, I guess, for the Sarge, and he asked for directions. And the old Sarge pointed him in the right direction toward the memorial. And then he said, pointing at me, he said, this is a combat veteran of the war. And this middle-aged guy was kind of like nonplussed, standing there, kind of sputtering. And he finally sputtered out, thank you for your service. I was standing there feeling awkward, and I managed to get out, thank you. But I felt on the spot. And after a moment of mutual embarrassment, this chap walked on, and I followed, saying, see you, Sarge. And I was kind of thinking, well, why did the Sarge do that? It was kind of an awkward moment. Anyway, I walked down to the wall and toward the etched granite, black granite, and I experienced a deep connection to the memorial. I did not utter the words, thank you for your service. Instead, I felt a ghostly connection to those behind the etched names in the wall, and also a little bit of survivor's guilt. I was awed by the profound sacrifice of the 58,000 and recalled the sacrifices needed to preserve our most cherished freedoms that can easily be taken for granted. The veterans, their families, the amount of effort and turmoil and tears, it all awed me. Coming away from that, I felt that service is rooted in your soul and what you hold dear. It's more than waving the flag, it's more than waving a uniform, and more than marching in patriotic parades. Military service means life and death choices for those people and freedoms we hold most dear. It means deep feelings which can't be easily expressed in words. It goes beyond any one war. It is about who you are and the appreciation you have for the blessings of citizenship. It has meanings beyond yourself. The ultimate meaning of service is to give to something greater than yourself, to the cause of our freedoms, to what we hold dear, the lives, liberties, and well-being of our families, our friends, our communities, and our nation. For every member of the military, there is a sworn duty to protect our freedoms by pledging to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And when a service member takes this oath to the Constitution, it is not about an old, dusty document that we learned about in school. It's an oath to protect what the Constitution means, the values we live by and we strive toward every day. It's about protecting the way we are governed, our right to vote, and our Bill of Rights, among them the freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom to protest, and more. All we need to do to see how precious these freedoms are is to look around the world where people are persecuted, attacked, denied basic freedoms, and worse. To be sure, we do struggle to defend our rights, our civil liberties, and ability to pursue happiness, even within our own country. But we would not be able to do so, or even hope to come close, unless we can protect ourselves from aggression. Veterans have stood up to protect our freedoms all along, and that is the ultimate meaning of service. Now, it's true that veterans are not the only ones working to uphold our freedoms. We can thank many brave people, people who, maybe reporters who report the truth, independently thinking legislators, whistleblowers, protesters, people who make constructive comments on the media, the families of veterans. We can all be of service to others. It's kind of like what Martin Luther King said, everybody can be great. Everybody can be great because everyone can serve. It's just that veterans knowingly put themselves in harm's way, where they may suffer great losses that will irrevocably change the course of their lives. So when you see a living veteran, or witness the 58,000 on the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, or visit the memorials of World War I, World War II, Korea, or any other memorials going back to the founding of this country, you can consider the honor, the courage, the sacrifice devoted to you, your family, your community, and our nation. You can be thankful for someone who was willing to give all they had for all of us. So say, thank you for protecting my freedoms. Thank you for shielding me and my family from harm. Or sincerely say, thank you for your service, and recall that service is the foundation of a better society. Amen. Oh, and now we're going to have time for a talk back. So let me
It's the one next to the piano. It's the one next to the piano. It's right on the piano. Just click it on, yeah.
Okay. All right, well, I was hoping we'd have a microphone for people in the church. But anyway, this is an opportunity, if anybody wants to share your thoughts and anything related to Veterans Day. Okay, we'll go back to Joan first. And, do we have another mic, Jordan?
You can pass the mic around and use one of the choir mics to talk.
Okay, is this working here?
Yeah, they work. I just need to turn
it does?
them on.
Okay. All right, here we go, Joan.
My question has to do with draftees. I remember the Vietnam War very, very, very well. And my brother was in college at the time. And sometimes one of his friends, who was later killed in the war, lived in our cellar for a while. It was an intimate kind of a thing, the Vietnam War for me. But I always wondered if when you volunteer versus you're a draftee, is there a difference in the units that are fighting? Is there an emotional difference?
Well, that's an interesting question. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. Yeah? Okay. So Joan, during the Vietnam War, a third of the people there were draftees. I was somebody who who joined ROTC, Reserve Officer Training Course, back in the middle of the 60s, and I just thought it was a nice idea to sort of, have a career or do some work in civilian life, and then also be able to help out if something bad happened. Well, it turned out that I wound up being involved in the Vietnam War. But I think the biggest thing, Joan, that relates to your question has to do with the way people were rotated into the units. So in the Vietnam War, unlike other wars, as a general rule of thumb, a whole unit, like a company or a battalion or a regiment, was not sent in one piece over there. They may have been initially, but generally they weren't. And so you had people rotating in. They might have been a draftee or they might have been a volunteer, but they were rotated in as an individual. And of course, they had various, GIs had various names for them, friendly little names. But they were seen, initially anyway, as newbies. And it took a while for them to earn their stripes, so to speak. But I also, I had the great fortune of not being in a large military unit. I was on a 5-man team out in the boondocks, and which some people considered a misfortune. But on the other hand, you weren't involved in a lot of the troubles that happened on big military bases towards the end of the war when I was there. So I can't really speak to the attitudes there about new people. It probably had more to do with other things going on, the attitudes about the war, the situation with drugs, racial issues, and all of that stuff. That probably dominated more, is my guess. So even though I can't really answer your question completely, that gives you a little flavor for the situation. Okay.
Can I carry that for you?
Well, I would like to thank you for your service, and that's a genuine thank you for your service, because I'm sure when you signed up, you had no idea what you were signing up for or where you were going, and we've all seen the movies,
Yeah.
and the horrors and the image and the river and the jungle and between Apocalypse Now and all of these other movies, but, and then it's interesting now Vietnam is a very popular tourist destination in Southeast Asia, but so for that, thank you for your service. But my question is, how you mentioned earlier that every member of the service or the military, they take a vow, an oath to honor and protect the Constitution of the United States.
Could you say that again a little more slowly? I'm having,
Sure.
my hearing aids are not quite
Sure.
as great as I'd like
Sure.
them to be.
How you reminded us how every service member or member of the military takes a vow or an oath
Yes.
to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And so I wonder how that oath is reconciled today when service members are being asked to go to American cities, to patrol peaceful protesters who are exercising their constitutional right, and other things that are going on with immigration and being used in that capacity. How can members of the military possibly push back on anything if they see that there is an enemy, foreign or domestic?
Okay, thank you. I was kind of thinking somebody would ask that question. And of course it's very tricky, but first of all, there is the oath that people take. Now, how well they understand the oath is, of course, an open question. But the first thing is I certainly hope that members of the service stick to the oath, okay? Now, it's very difficult to stick to the oath when you're under pressure in a very fast-moving situation, and there's a lot, for example, we have the My Lai massacre, where all those people took the oath, but they were part of, some of them were part of an atrocity. Now, others were not. Some said no, because you are allowed to not obey an illegal order, okay? So I think one thing that might help is that the people who are being called to these cities seem to be National Guards, who are civilian soldiers, and they come from families, they come from communities, they come from careers, civilian lives, and they're affected by, they have a broad perspective. It's not just somebody in the military who's told to follow orders. So I'm hoping that that perspective also adds to the strength, the moral strength they have to, to consider whether an order is lawful or not. I can say from reading different things that, the attitudes of veterans, of course, span, I'm talking about veterans for over time, but span a wide range. But generally, there's a belief in the values of our country and the oath to the Constitution. And the Constitution is more important, has greater weight than some questionable leaders. So I don't know the answer to that. This is the true test that we're in. We're in the middle of a test, an experiment. And but I think there are various things that could help to keep that in balance, and I hope so. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, Mike.
I enjoyed my 3 years in the Navy on a destroyer, 1961 to 64, chasing submarines around the North Atlantic. I was Combat Information Center officer and an anti-submarine air controller. We did get the award for the best ship in the Atlantic Fleet for anti-submarine warfare. Mm-hmm. My question is in terms of the misuse of the military, in terms of shelling fishing vessels off Venezuela or Mexico. I was pleased to see that the senior Navy officer in Southern Command did announce his stepping down as of the end of the year, but it would have been a lot more forceful, I thought, if he'd said, I'm resigning now, and this is why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I would like to think that a captain or even a CIC officer, given what's clearly an unlawful order to shell a fishing vessel in international waters, would say, I refuse to obey a lawful order. In my case, I probably would have been demoted on the spot and sent to the ship's brig. But I'd like to know your thoughts on how senior or junior officers can respond to what they perceive as unlawful orders.
That's right. Well, you know, that is why it is so important to have a positive culture in the military, because it can easily, you know, with machismo and firepower and, you know, ranks of people, it can easily get blown up into a, you know, ego power type of thing, and you get carried away, go off track. So it's important to have the right kinds of leaders setting the tone for the culture and what things they value and what they talk about. And hopefully that will make a situation where if you do stand up to an illegal order, you're not thrown in the brig. Or at least if you are, you get released pretty quickly, you know. So, but yes, that is something that everyone, you know, particularly the junior officers and the NCOs have to struggle with. And I know my own personal experience was that was something of concern to me. And I was very fortunate in that I was away from these large bases where we had a lot of crazy stuff that went on, and we didn't always have the best leadership, I don't think, and we could kind of get away with a lot. We didn't have to. We were sort of I don't know. We had more freedoms in terms of how we did things, and we also lived with the Vietnamese people and became part of. We tried to, you know, matriculate into their culture and have a deep liaison with them. At the same time, we were doing military tactics, so we had a greater appreciation for the humanity around us, and that also helps when you realize that you know, the disagreements doesn't mean that your opponent is all bad, but even though they're trying to kill you, they still are human beings, you know. So if you can get anything positive out of that, that can help. But it's very hard when you're in a combat situation, when you have those overwhelming factors influencing the situation. Yeah. Oh, Rick? Oh, Rick needs the, here, you want me to give you? Here, okay.
I was drafted, but I wanted to say is that I appreciate everybody's service. You're all human beings that are doing the best you can in your life for your community and for your church. When I was drafted, we were all put into the combat arms. So I was trained in the infantry. And fortunate, I ended up in the Berlin Brigade. And we were instructed that every one of us was an ambassador for the United States of America and democracy. So again, I wanted to thank everybody for your service.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, was there another hand up here that I see? Okay. All right. Well, I guess thank you very much for your thoughts and comments and your participation. Okay.